What if Anakin told Obi Wan about Palpatine instead of Mace Windu? What would happen then? Let's find out. As the golden light of Coruscant's setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Anakin Skywalker found himself piloting his Delta 7B Ether Sprite class Light Interceptor, better known as the Jedi Starfighter, away from the Republic Executive Building. His mind was in chaos, the shocking revelation about Chancellor Palpatine's true identity consuming his thoughts. He had set course for the Jedi Temple, intending to inform Master Windu of his discovery, but doubt confused him. What would Mace do with this information? Would he move to arrest Palpatine? Or worse, kill him? The very thought sent a chill down Anakin's spine. Palpatine had promised him the power to save Padme. Could he risk losing that chance? As the conflict raged within him, Anakin suddenly jerked the controls, veering away from his original flight path. On impulse, he guided his starfighter towards a towering entertainment complex, its neon signs already flickering to life in the gathering dusk. With practiced ease, he maneuvered the sleek craft into an open hangar bay, powering down the engines. Anakin climbed out of the cockpit, his movements mechanical, driven by a need to clear his head. He strode to the edge of the hangar. The vast cityscape of Coruscant stretched out before him, an endless sea of buildings and streaming traffic lanes. To his right, the sun was sinking below the horizon, its last rays casting long shadows across the urban landscape. As he stood there, the cool evening air whipping at his robes, Anakin grappled with the enormity of his decision. The fate of the Republic, the Jedi Order, and his own future teetered on a knife's edge. In that moment, a face flashed in his mind, not Mace Windu's stern visage, but the kind, bearded countenance of his former master. If there was anyone he could trust with this, anyone who might understand the complexity of his situation, it was Obi Wan Kenobi. With trembling fingers, Anakin reached for his comlink. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then resolutely punched in the familiar frequency. "Commander Cody here," came the crisp response, catching Anakin off guard. "Cody, I need to speak with Master Kenobi immediately," Anakin said, his voice tense. "I'm afraid General Kenobi is occupied at the moment, sir," Cody replied. "He's just defeated General Grievous and we're securing Utapau at the moment." Anakin's heart raced. "It's urgent, Cody. I must speak with him now." There was a brief pause before Cody responded, clearly sensing the urgency in Anakin's tone. "Understood, sir. Please hold while I get him for you." As Anakin waited, he turned his gaze back to the Coruscant skyline. The sun continued its descent, the last sliver of its golden disk now barely visible on the horizon. The sky had deepened to a rich purple, with the first stars beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness. The seconds stretched into minutes, each moment feeling like an eternity as Anakin's mind churned with the weight of his knowledge. He watched as the sun finally disappeared completely, leaving only a faint glow in its wake. The neon lights of the entertainment district began to flicker on in earnest, creating a dazzling display against the darkening sky. As Anakin's thoughts began to drift, the familiar sound of Obi-Wan's voice suddenly pulled him back to reality. "Anakin? What's going on?" Obi-Wan's voice crackled through the comlink, a mix of concern and curiosity evident in his tone. Anakin took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Master, I've just discovered something critical. Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious." There was a moment of stunned silence before Obi-Wan spoke again. "That's... Anakin, what makes you believe that?" "He revealed it to me himself, Master," Anakin explained, his voice tight with tension. "He knows things about the Sith, about their powers, that no one else could know. He spoke of abilities that defy the natural order, things only a Sith would pursue." Anakin continued, his words coming faster now. "It all makes sense, Obi-Wan. The Sith Lord we've been searching for, the one manipulating both sides of this war, it's been Palpatine all along. He's been playing us, using his position as Chancellor to orchestrate everything." "Remember what Dooku said on Geonosis?" Anakin added, his voice dropping lower. "He wasn't lying when he told you the Senate was under the control of a Sith Lord, Obi-Wan." Obi-Wan was silent for a moment, and Anakin could almost hear his former master's mind working to process this shocking information. When Obi-Wan spoke again, his voice was filled with a mixture of disbelief and growing alarm. "Anakin, if what you're saying is true, the implications are staggering. We need to approach this very carefully. Where are you now?" "I'm on my way to the temple," Anakin replied, hesitation clear in his voice. "I don't know what to do, Obi-Wan." Obi-Wan sighed heavily. "I share your uncertainty, Anakin. This is a situation we've never truly prepared for. Did Palpatine give any indication as to why he would reveal himself to you now?" Anakin reflected on the encounter, trying to piece together Palpatine's motivations. No, he didn't explicitly say, but he seemed confident, like he had everything under control. "I see," Obi-Wan said, his voice growing grave. "Anakin, think about the timing. The war is effectively over with Grievous's defeat. It can't be a coincidence that Palpatine has chosen this moment to reveal himself." Anakin listened intently as Obi-Wan continued. Whatever his final plan is, he must be ready to put it into motion. We have to assume he's prepared for our response. He's made his move, and he likely anticipates our counter. Obi-Wan stepped away from the cheering clones around him, moving to a quieter spot where he could hear Anakin more clearly. He gazed at the horizon, his mind working through the implications of this revelation. "Anakin?" Obi-Wan said, his voice low and serious. "I need to know exactly what Palpatine said to you. Did he threaten you in any way to keep you from telling anyone?" "No," Anakin replied. "He didn't threaten me." There was a slight hesitation in Anakin's voice, which Obi-Wan didn't miss. Obi-Wan nodded to himself. "Then it seems he's deliberately trying to provoke the Jedi into action against him. Is that all he revealed? Just his identity as a Sith?" Obi-Wan's question hung in the air, probing for more information based on Anakin's uncertain response. Anakin seemed reluctant to answer, not knowing if he should talk about Padme. "Anakin," Obi-Wan said gently, "did Palpatine say anything about Padme?" Both men knew that Obi-Wan was aware of Anakin's relationship with Padme, though they had never openly discussed it. Now, given the urgency of the situation, that unspoken agreement could no longer stand. Kenobi knew that Padme was a potential weakness for Anakin, one that Palpatine could easily exploit. Over the years, he had witnessed how Anakin had often disregarded reason and protocol where Padme was concerned. The mighty Anakin Skywalker, for all his power and skill, could become vulnerable when it came to matters involving her. Sensing Anakin's continued hesitation, Obi-Wan spoke softly but firmly. "Anakin, whatever it is, I'm here to help you. Tell me, what did Palpatine say?" There was a moment of silence. Then Anakin's voice came through, tinged with a mix of fear and desperation. "Master, I've been having visions. Visions of Padme dying." Obi-Wan's breath caught in his throat, but he remained silent, allowing Anakin to continue. "Palpatine knew about it. He said he could help. He offered to use the power of the dark side to keep her alive." Obi-Wan chose his words carefully as he responded. "Anakin, listen to me. Force visions are not absolutes. They're often unclear and can be misinterpreted. If there truly was a way to save someone from death, that knowledge would be present in the Jedi archives, which span 25,000 years of wisdom. You don't need Palpatine's help for this." Obi-Wan didn't know if what he was saying about the archives was entirely true, but he knew Anakin needed to hear this to dissuade him from believing Palpatine was the answer to saving Padme. He continued, "Palpatine is manipulating you, Anakin. He plans to use and discard you, just as he did with Maul and Dooku. You can't trust him." Anakin's tone was one of confusion as he responded to this. "What do I need to do, Master?" Obi-Wan replied without hesitation, "Don't go to the temple. Leave Coruscant immediately. Take Padme and go to Naboo. Staying close to this situation isn't safe for either of you. Palpatine knows about her, and he's definitely planning something involving both of you. Distance is your best protection right now. For your own sake, Anakin, stay out of this." "What's going to happen?" Anakin asked. "Whatever the Sith are planning, they've been working towards it for 1,000 years, Anakin. The destruction of the Jedi Order has always been their ultimate goal." "How could the Chancellor accomplish that, Obi-Wan?" Anakin asked, sounding defeated. "Let's look at what we know," Obi-Wan said, his voice taking on a more analytical tone. "We know Dooku was likely working with Sidious, and it was Dooku or Tyrannus who commissioned the clone army." There was a pause as Obi-Wan's mind raced, connecting dots he'd never considered before. "Anakin," he said, his voice urgent, "do you remember what Five said? He accused the Chancellor of being involved in some plot involving the inhibitor chips, right?" "Yes," Anakin replied, waiting for Obi-Wan's response. "What if Fives wasn't lying?" Obi-Wan asked. "What if the army itself is Palpatine's weapon against the Jedi? The chips, the clones, it all fits." Anakin's voice came through, filled with dawning horror. "If Palpatine orders the army against the Jedi, the chips might force them to carry out the order. Whatever happened to Tup when he killed Master Tiplar, it could happen to all the clones." On Utapau, the sounds of the clones cheering once again invaded Obi-Wan's senses. Suddenly, the realization hit him like a thunderbolt. He was surrounded by them, as were most Jedi across the galaxy. This was Palpatine's plan all along. "Anakin," Obi-Wan said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we're all in immediate danger. Every Jedi in the field is surrounded by potential enemies. This is why you need to leave Coruscant now. Get Padme and go. I'll contact the Council and warn them about the potential threat from the clones." Obi-Wan continued, his voice softening. "Anakin, once we've dealt with this immediate threat, we'll find a way to help Padme. I promise you that. And I want you to know that I would have helped earlier if I had known the extent of your visions." So, quick side note, during the events of Attack of the Clones, Anakin never actually told Obi-Wan that he saw his mother die in his visions, only that he had dreamt of her. When Obi-Wan did find out after the events of the movie, He had told Anakin in a saddened tone that he would have helped had he known Anakin had foreseen her death. Anyways, back to the story. The conversation between Anakin and Obi Wan continued for a while longer, with Obi Wan reassuring Anakin and providing guidance on what to do next. Eventually, they ended the call, both aware of the urgency of the situation. Anakin immediately flew his starfighter to Padme's apartment. Upon arriving, he rushed inside, finding her in the living area. "Padme," he said, "something is about to happen. We need to leave Coruscant." Padme looked at him. Confusion and concern etched on her face. "Anakin, what's going on?" she asked. Anakin took a deep breath, knowing he couldn't reveal everything but needing to convey the urgency. "I've just received intelligence about a potential threat to the Republic and the Jedi Order. There's a possibility that Coruscant might become unsafe very soon." Anakin continued, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "I promise I'll explain everything in more detail once we're safe. But right now, we need to act quickly. Can you trust me on this?" Padme studied Anakin's face for a moment, her political instincts kicking in. She recognized the gravity in his tone and the urgency of his request. "All right, Anakin, we'll go," she said, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Keeping her grip steady, she asked, "Where do you want to go?" "I was thinking, Naboo," Anakin replied. "Okay, we'll head to Naboo and talk about everything, all right?" Anakin gave a nod in agreement. Padme then moved towards her comm unit. "I'll inform Captain Typho of our departure. He can make the necessary arrangements discreetly." Padme quickly contacted Typho, explaining that she needed to return to Naboo immediately due to a potential security threat. She instructed him to prepare her ship and a small security detail, emphasizing the need for secrecy. After Padme's brief communication with Captain Typho, events moved quickly. Within the hour, she and Anakin were aboard her sleek Nubian yacht, lifting off from the Coruscant skyline. The ship's powerful engines hummed as it ascended through the atmosphere, soon making the jump to hyperspace on a direct course to Naboo. Meanwhile, on Utapau, Obi-Wan wasted no time after ending his call with Anakin. He immediately reached for his long-range communicator, inputting the secure frequency for the Jedi Council. Within moments, the holographic images of several council members flickered to life, with Master Yoda joining from Kashyyyk. "Masters," Obi-Wan began, "I have urgent information that requires immediate attention." He quickly relayed everything he had learned from Anakin, Palpatine's true identity as a Sith Lord, the potential threat posed by the clone army, and the possible activation of the inhibitor chips. Obi-Wan emphasized the need for swift and discreet action to protect the Jedi and the Republic. As he spoke, he could see the concern deepening on the faces of his fellow Jedi. Yoda's ears drooped as he absorbed Obi-Wan's report. "Troubling, this news is. Palpatine seeks to provoke us. If we act rashly, we play into his hands." Mace leaned in, his hologram flickering. "We can't sit on our hands, Master Yoda. Every second Palpatine's in power is dangerous. We need to arrest him, legally, and lay our cards on the table for the Senate." Obi-Wan stroked his beard, frowning. "That's risky, Mace. Without solid proof, we'll look like we're staging a coup." "Balance we must find," Yoda mused, "between caution and action." Mace's face hardened. "First things first, we warn our people, encrypted messages to every Jedi in the field. Tell them to keep their distance from the clones and be ready for anything. It's not foolproof, but it's the best we can do." He hesitated, then added, "And the younglings. We should think about getting them out of the temple, just in case." Obi-Wan nodded, then spoke up. "There's more, Masters. We found something in the memory banks of Grievous's Magna Guards. It could change everything." The Council hammered out their strategy, debating every angle. Each choice they made could ripple out, changing the fate of the galaxy. In his office on Coruscant, Palpatine waited. The chrono ticked towards midnight, each second bringing the Jedi closer. A thin smile crept across his face as he sensed their approach. Years of plotting had led to this moment. Palpatine's office door slid open, admitting Masters Windu, Shakti, Kit Fisto, and Aegon Kolar. Their faces were grim, lightsabers in hand, but not yet ignited. Mace stepped forward, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "In the name of the Galactic Senate of the Republic, you're under arrest, Chancellor." Palpatine's eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. "Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?" "The Senate will decide your fate," Mace replied, his hand moving to his lightsaber. Palpatine stood slowly, his genial mask slipping away. "I am the Senate," he said slowly. "Not yet," Shakti interjected, her voice calm but firm. Palpatine's eyes flashed dangerously. "It's treason, then." Kit Fisto's tentacles rippled. "Your reign of deception ends here, Sidious." Mace's eyes widened as he sensed a disturbance in the Force. "Be ready," he warned his companions. In a blur of motion almost too fast to follow, Palpatine produced a lightsaber from his sleeve. The blood-red blade ignited with a menacing hiss, just as the Jedi activated their own weapons. With a primal scream that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building, Palpatine launched himself at the Jedi, his lightsaber a crimson arc of deadly energy. As Palpatine's scream echoed through the room, he spun towards Agent Kolar with inhuman speed. The Sabrak Jedi barely had time to raise his saber before Palpatine's crimson blade sliced through his defenses, cutting him down in an instant. Kit Fisto leapt forward. For a moment it seemed the Nautilan's fluid style might match Palpatine's ferocity, but in a whirlwind of red light, Palpatine outmaneuvered him, and Fisto fell. Shakti and Mace pressed the attack, their blades weaving a complex defense as Palpatine drove them back. The Chancellor's office became a storm of flashing lightsabers and flying debris. In the chaos, Mace's purple blade shattered the panoramic window, sending shards of transparent steel raining into the Coruscant night. Despite the losses, Shakti and Mace began to gain ground. Their combined skill forced Palpatine on the defensive, driving him back towards the shattered window. With a powerful force push, Mace knocked Palpatine off balance. Mace held his saber to Palpatine's throat, his voice firm. "The oppression of the Sith will never return. You have lost, Sidious." Palpatine's eyes blazed with hate. "No," he snarled. "You will die." Suddenly, blue lightning erupted from Palpatine's fingertips, catching both Jedi off guard. The force of the attack sent Shakti and Mace staggering backwards. Palpatine pressed his advantage, the lightning intensifying as he advanced on the Jedi. With a final surge of dark side energy, Palpatine blasted both Mace and Shakti, sending them tumbling through the broken window and out into the Coruscant night. Palpatine stood and approached the shattered window. He could still sense Mace and Shakti's presence in the Force. A thin smile curved his lips. Not only had they failed to stop him, but they had inadvertently given him the final piece he needed, legal justification to move against the Jedi Order. He turned from the window. The absence of Anakin Skywalker was an unexpected complication. Palpatine had counted on the young Jedi's presence to aid in the assault on the temple, but for reasons unknown, Anakin had fled to Naboo with Senator Amidala. It was a setback, but not an insurmountable one. The Jedi Temple would fall regardless, Palpatine decided. Even without Anakin, even with its formidable defenses, the temple could not withstand an assault from millions of clone troopers if necessary. And as for Anakin himself, if he would not willingly join the dark side, there were other ways. Capture, stasis, and the ancient Sith technique of essence transfer could ensure that Skywalker's power would serve Palpatine's purposes one way or another. With these thoughts settled, Palpatine strode to his desk. His fingers danced over the controls, activating a secure, galaxy-wide transmission to every clone trooper. His voice, now rough and gravelly from the exertion of the dark side, spoke the words that he believed would change the course of galactic history. "The time has come. Execute Order 66. After issuing the galaxy-wide command to execute Order 66, Palpatine began contacting individual clone commanders serving under Jedi he considered particularly threatening. As he made these calls, a disturbing pattern emerged. "Commander Bly, report on Master Secura's status," Palpatine demanded. "Sir, Master Secura is gone. She left unexpectedly hours ago. We're searching, but..." Similar responses came from other commanders. Plo Koon had vanished from his starfighter squadron. Ki-Adi-Mundi had abruptly departed his post on Maigito. When Palpatine reached Commander Cody, his report was equally frustrating. "Chancellor, General Kenobi left without explanation. He took a ship and fled Utapau. We're attempting to track..." Palpatine cut the transmission, his rage building. He sank into his chair, mind racing. Had the Force itself warned the Jedi? It seemed impossible, yet the evidence suggested a level of preparedness he hadn't anticipated. Gathering himself, Palpatine activated his comm once more. "Mas Amedda, come to my office immediately. Bring a full report on Order 66's effectiveness, and coordinate an immediate attack on the Jedi Temple." As he waited for his vice chair to arrive, Palpatine's fingers drummed on his desk. The Jedi's apparent forewarning was an unexpected complication, but no matter, Palpatine thought. The order would still fall. It would just require adjustments to his plan. Mas Amedda entered the office. He bowed slightly to Palpatine before beginning his report. "My lord, I'm afraid the Jedi casualties are lower than anticipated," Amedda said, his voice carefully neutral. "It appears they may have been warned of an impending attack. We've traced an encrypted message sent from the temple to all Jedi in the field. Our teams are working to decrypt it now." Palpatine's anger flared, his yellow eyes flashing. "How?" he snarled. "How could they have known?" He stood abruptly, turning to face the shattered window. The Coruscant skyline stretched out before him, the first hints of dawn appearing on the horizon. "What of the assault on the temple?" he demanded, not turning around. Amedda cleared his throat. "The 501st is marching on the temple as we speak, my lord. However, the temple shields are active, and its defenses are formidable. It may take some time to breach them." Palpatine's reflection in the broken glass showed a scowl. Ameta hastily added, "But the temple will fall, my lord. That is assured." Palpatine remained silent for a moment, his mind working furiously. Then he turned back to Ameta, his face a mask of determination. "Send more troops. Whatever it takes. The Jedi must not escape. And find me, Skywalker." Right as Palpatine finished saying it, Ameta's comlink chirped. The Shagrian glanced at the ID and hesitated. "It's the Security Council, my lord," Ameta reported, his voice cautious. Palpatine remained motionless. Taking this as tacit permission, Ameta answered the call. After a brief conversation, Ameta ended the transmission. "There's an issue, my lord." Palpatine again faced Coruscant and asked, "What issue?" Ameta moved to the holoprojector, activating it with a trembling hand. "The Security Council sent this. It's already on the holonet." Ameta activated the holoprojector, and a flickering blue image sprang to life. It was a video recording. The recording began with a view of the hallway outside Palpatine's office, the perspective bobbing slightly as if attached to someone's clothing. As the image moved into the office, Palpatine's eyes narrowed. He realized with growing fury that this was a recording of his confrontation with the Jedi, captured from Mace Windu's point of view. The Jedi Master must have been wearing a miniature cam device on his robes. Palpatine figured. The hologram showed Palpatine's transformation from kindly Chancellor to Sith Lord, his face twisting with malice as he produced a lightsaber. The camera's view jerked wildly as the battle began, capturing flashes of crimson and purple as the blades clashed. Brief glimpses of Kolar and Fisto falling appeared in the frame, their expressions frozen in shock. The recording continued, showing Palpatine's inhuman speed and power from the perspective of his opponent. Then came the moment that made the Sith Lord's blood boil. The view tilted upward, capturing Palpatine's face contorted with dark side energy as Force lightning erupted from his fingertips. The recording's final moments showed the room spinning as Windu was blasted towards the window. As he fell, the camera caught a last glimpse of Palpatine's form, arms still outstretched, fingers crackling with residual energy. The projection flickered and died, leaving Palpatine staring at the empty air where his exposed secrets had just played out. Palpatine's mind worked quickly, piecing together what had happened. He had jammed all transmissions during the fight, but when he threw Mace and Shakti out the window, they must have fallen out of the jamming range. The recording had reached its intended target, likely transmitted automatically once it was clear of interference. Mas Ameta broke the tense silence. "What will we do, my lord?" Palpatine's face remained impassive, his voice cold and calculating. "Call an emergency session of the Senate. I will address the galaxy directly." "And what will you tell them?" Ameta asked cautiously. "The truth," Palpatine replied, his voice laced with contempt, "that I was merely defending myself against Jedi assassins, who would have killed me and seized control of the Republic. They despise the beliefs I hold, the changes I've proposed. This was their desperate attempt to cling to power." He turned back to the shattered window, his reflection ghostly in the transparent steel shards. "We'll expose them as the villains they truly are. The galaxy will see the Jedi for what they've become, power-hungry zealots willing to murder an elected official to maintain their grip on the Republic." Ameta nodded, moving to carry out Palpatine's orders. Soon Palpatine stood before the Senate on his podium, flanked by Sly Moore and Mas Ameta. His voice rang out across the vast rotunda as he began his speech. "Senators, I come before you in a time of great peril," he intoned. "You have seen the recording of the Jedi attack on me, but it does not show the full truth. The Jedi sought to arrest me, a thinly veiled attempt at assassination, simply for my beliefs protected by our very Constitution." He paused, his voice growing more impassioned. "Had I allowed them to take me, I would have been murdered. This is why I kept my beliefs to myself all these years. The Jedi feared a leader with different views, even as I guided our Republic through this terrible war. They were willing to commit murder, rather than allow someone who disagreed with their dogma to lead." As Palpatine spoke, cheers began to rise from various parts of the Senate. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. All was falling into place once more. However, as his speech continued, quiet alerts of comm transmissions began to sound here and there in the rotunda. Mas Ameta noticed it first, his eyes darting around the chamber. Soon Palpatine became aware of it too, as murmurs started rising from various points, accompanied by an increasing number of comlink alerts. Mas Ameta called for order, but the sounds did not die down. The murmurs grew louder, more insistent. Palpatine paused in his speech. "What is happening?" he demanded. At that moment, Mas Ameta's own comlink chirped urgently. The Shagrian's face paled as he answered it, listening to the voice on the other end. Mas Ameta turned to Palpatine, his face ashen. But before he could speak, the reason for the commotion became immediately apparent when the Senate's central holoprojector flickered to life, instantly displaying what had captured the Senator's attention to the entire rotunda, and by extension, the whole galaxy, the faces of the Separatist leadership appeared. Newt Gunray's voice rang out, filled with urgency. "People of the galaxy, we must reveal the truth. Lord Sidious has been leading us from the beginning, starting just before the invasion of Naboo. He promised us peace and prosperity for our systems. That is why we followed his directives." Sandhill of the banking clan added, "Sidious controlled both sides of this war. He was above even Count Dooku and General Grievous in our hierarchy." Wat Tambor's mechanized voice chimed in, "We can confirm that Sidious is indeed a Sith Lord, as the Jedi have claimed." Gunray spoke again. "As proof, we have released recorded holo-transmissions between us and Sidious over the years onto the HoloNet. You will see for yourselves the extent of his manipulation." As the Separatists' revelation unfolded, chaos erupted in the Senate chamber. Senators shouted in disbelief and anger. Across the galaxy, HoloNet channels began broadcasting emergency reports, and HoloTubers started streaming live commentary as they analyzed the newly released recordings. Palpatine stood motionless on his podium, his face a mask of cold fury. His carefully constructed plans were unraveling before his eyes. The recording made by Mace Windu had exposed him as a Sith, and now the Separatists had confirmed the Jedi's accusations by revealing his leadership of both sides of the war. He had been fully exposed, his decades of manipulation laid bare for the entire galaxy to see. So how did all this come to pass? To explain that, let's go over the entirety of what the Jedi discussed during Obi Wan's meeting with the Council. During their crucial discussion, the Council decided on a two-part plan to expose Palpatine. First, Mace Windu and other masters would confront Palpatine directly, recording their interaction. They reasoned that the Sith, being prideful and prone to various emotions that might lead to boasting, would likely expose himself if he felt he had won. This was Mace's idea to acquire definitive proof of Palpatine being Sidious. However, the Jedi were aware that simply exposing Palpatine as a Sith might not be enough. His grip on the Republic was too tight, and he could potentially convince everyone that the Jedi were still in the wrong. This is where Obi Wan's discovery came into play. Obi Wan had found a recording in Grievous's Magna Guard memory units showing these Separatist leaders being sent to the Mustafar system. He proposed to the Council that he would go to Mustafar, find the Separatist leaders, and get them to confess everything they knew. Obi Wan believed they might cooperate after learning Sidious's true identity and realizing his inevitable betrayal. The Council agreed, and Obi Wan immediately left for Mustafar. And to help out Obi Wan, other Jedi, both Knights and Masters alike, including Saesee Tiin, were dispatched to Mustafar. Upon infiltrating the Separatist hideout, they informed the leaders of the truth about Sidious. They explained how the Sith don't share power, and that Palpatine planned to take over the Republic and eliminate them to cover his tracks. The Jedi emphasized that Palpatine would sense their knowledge of his true identity and wouldn't let them live. Faced with this revelation, and surrounded by Jedi, the Separatists, especially Newt Gunray, realized they had no choice. Knowing Sidious's power and their current predicament, they decided to surrender and confess everything they knew. As the Separatists gave their confession, Obi-Wan contacted the temple, informing Mace that the Mustafar mission had been successful. With this confirmation, Mace proceeded to confront Palpatine, aiming to get evidence of him admitting to being Sidious. After the confrontation, which Mace and Shakti survived despite being thrown from the window, they immediately released Palpatine's confession to the HoloNet. Shortly after, the Separatist's confession from Mustafar was also released, completely exposing Palpatine's duplicity to the galaxy. After Palpatine's exposure, the Security Council acted swiftly, immediately calling off the clone attack on the Jedi and stripping Palpatine of his powers as Chancellor. The Jedi Purge, which had barely begun, ended abruptly with little success in this timeline. However, before Palpatine could be brought to trial, he managed to escape. This was likely due to lingering support from some quarters, and the controversial decision not to hand him over to Jedi custody. The circumstances of his escape remained unclear, with many questioned but no definitive answers emerging about his whereabouts. This turn of events allowed the Jedi to expose the extent of corruption within the Republic that had enabled Palpatine's rise and near takeover. As a result, those opposed to Palpatine and sympathetic to the Jedi gained power in the Senate. Public opinion swung in favor of the Jedi Order. So following all this, a few things happened. The inhibitor chips were soon removed from all clone troopers. While the clones were never fully trusted again, there was some understanding that they had been unwilling pawns in Palpatine's scheme. Anakin and Padme returned to Coruscant, where Luke and Leia were soon born. Padme survived childbirth, and Anakin continued his role as a Jedi. Their relationship became an even more open secret within the Order. And as for Ahsoka, she was personally warned by Anakin about the potential clone betrayal. And because of that, she did not leave Mandalore with the clones. And so, in this timeline, Maul was killed during the short-lived purge. The Jedi Order, while relieved at averting catastrophe, became more focused on the potential return of the Sith. They were acutely aware that Palpatine was still at large, posing a continued threat to the galaxy. This new focus shaped the Order's priorities and training in the years that followed. What if a fly flew into Palpatine's mouth during his speech in Revenge of the Sith? What if Maul's speeder blew up in The Phantom Menace? These are some of the mini what-ifs available on my Patreon for $1 or more a month. So do check that out if you're interested. Link should be in the description. But if you don't want to do that, don't worry. They will be uploaded to the channel in a month or so. Also, thank you to all the existing Patreon supporters and channel members. Your help really does mean a lot to me. Goodbye and see you in the next one.